Well, even working on films, but like if you're on festivals, you know, literary festivals,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you'll see someone you haven't seen for 4 or 5 years.
So some cruises are themed cruises, and we're very lucky to have not only one, but 2 crime writers on this cruise, Stuart St Paul and Robert Daws. So Stuart's done a cruise ship crime investigator series, and Robert has done crime stories that are set in Gibraltar.
Correct, yes.
The place every cruise ship stops.
Robert, not only an author, but an actor with a large body of work. Do your characters in your roles influence your characters in your books? Have you been inspired by them?
Not necessarily the characters I've played, but certainly the process of acting. I was very fortunate as a younger actor. I spent 5 years at Stratford East, the Theatre Royal Stratford East, which was a fantastic education because you went from play to play to play, but there were also many other things, and they had a very good improvisational team. I learned an awful lot about the basic techniques of improvisation, the basic things. You know, when you're making a story up with another actor, you always accept. You don't stop, and you accept and build, various things like that. Exactly, and you can go from character to character to character, whatever serves the story. And I think writing, I don't know whether you'd agree, Stuart, it is pretty much the same. I look at it as an improvisation in my head. So that's where my acting experience, I think, may in some way influence my writing. I mean, the nature of the business is the same, whether you're writing a book or whether you're giving a performance or whether you're directing a film. The onus is to entertain, really. And so I think there's a common bond in that. The difference between writing and acting and directing is directing and acting are very you work as a team, very much as a team, right from the beginning to pretty much the end. With writing, you pretty much work on your own until the very end, when you're being edited and then moving in. But even then, so I think the world of a writer is a lonelier one, really, in that respect, because you don't have someone sort of, you don't have you don't have your call sheet coming through every morning. So you've got a 6 o'clock pickup.
Do you know, I don't feel lonely when I'm writing, because for me, my characters are in my head. Yeah. And they are acting out what they're doing, and I'm really just taking dictation.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I think in pictures. I always have done.
And is that to do with you being dyslexic?
It could be. I mean, I had to, because at school I was a complete failure in that respect, because I couldn't read. They didn't understand dyslexia in the 50s. But I do remember, I mean, you know those things where they say, who would you like to meet again? I'd love to meet my old English teacher. I was in grade 6 for English. Yeah. And I was always the clown. I was always making stuff up. And he said he had a prediction. He went round the class just before we left at the end of term, the year he left us as our English teacher, and he predicted what everybody would do for a living. Yeah. And he left me till last, which I thought was an embarrassment. I thought I'd done something wrong. And he said, you are going to end up being a writer on an island somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And now I write cruise crime. How weird is that?
And you're going from island to island to island on this particular. Good grief, that's prophetic.
So if anyone knows him, what was Mr. Scrimshaw.
I hate to tell you this, but I think he's probably dead by now.
What a lovely name.
He's in the Guinness Book of Records if he's not gone, unfortunately. But Mr. Scrimshaw at Mackenzie High, Technical High in Walthamstow.
God. Well, he must have seen in you a creativity and a spark, and with your dyslexia that might not necessarily have come through in an academic way, writing stuff down on paper then, but he would have spotted it in your personality, your way with words. And let's face it, Stuart, you do have a wonderful way with words, so he would have spotted that.
Sometimes the wrong words.
How did you get into writing? Because you're a film director, so do you think in words or do you think filmatically? Do you see the pictures?
No, I definitely think pictures. Pictures and situations. So the words for me, in fact as a director, I work the same way. The words that are there are really just a guide. Yeah. If an actor says to me, I can say this better, differently, absolutely. Which is probably why I never directed TV or soaps, because you can't change the dialogue. you have to keep it.
It's very specific.
Absolutely
isn't it?
specific, because there's another director somewhere else directing the episode that follows you.
Yeah,
and all of those words are key. I couldn't do that. So as a movie director, I've always been inspired to only walk away from, well, I normally direct action, second unit, pick-up units on big films like Sherlock Holmes with Guy Ritchie, etc., etc. So the only time I would move away to do one of my films is if there is a situation or a subject matter which goes, you need to do this, forget the money. And I did one on sex trafficking. I've done one on incest in the home. All difficult topics.
Very strong topics.
And I finished off, is it my last film, Bullet? This one, there we go, I've got them all here. I was Universal Pictures suggested that I went to Fiji with Status Quo.
That's a nice suggestion.
And shoot a romp. And I did. Because they were just great ideas. Do you want to go to Fiji with a bunch of old mates you knew in the 70s? Yeah, I think actually I do. So my books tend to come from situations where the characters can then live. Now at the moment, I'm obviously on the cruise ships talking about my career, so around me I see everybody, I see all my characters. I don't copy somebody, but my research is watching how the cruise director works.
So do you set your action on specific cruise ships? Do you have one in mind, or do you take from different cruise ships?
My serial killer movie, which is more of a whodunit, it's probably the closest thing I've done to an Agatha Christie. Not that my writing is in any way similar to hers, but it's that way. Is a small ship like you would get a world cruise, and it's left Panama on the way to Tahiti. So for 11 days at sea, they're stuck, and then the serial killings start.
Wow.
One each night, and the guys that have to deal with it have to be dropped in from a plane, parachuted into the sea to join the ship, because the ship can't. It turns back. It's 3 days. It goes forward. It's 8 days.
Hasn't got wings, has it? No.
What about you, Robert? Why did you decide to set your books in Gibraltar?
Well, I was commissioned to do a TV pilot for Yorkshire Television, set in Yorkshire, set in York, which I did. And to cut a long story short, it went in. They tried to get it made for about 2 years, and in the end, people at the top changed and out it went. So it didn't get made, so it hung around in my bottom drawer for several years until someone said, have you ever thought of writing a novel? And because you've just done, I just created a successful radio detective drama for Radio 4 called Truman and Riley, and that had gone down very well. And someone said, as I say, do you write books? I thought, no, I haven't. Well, they said, have you got any ideas? So I went down, pulled out the script, looked through it. I thought, oh, this is an interesting plot. It's all to do with plots. You need a good P.G. Wodehouse used to say brilliantly, the great comic writer. He said, what I look for more than anything else are plots. He said, I like nothing better than wrestling a good plot to the ground and pinning its arms behind its back. Then I sit back and write it. And that's and I had the basic plot, and I had the sort of basis of the characters, but I didn't want to set it in Yorkshire, no disrespect to Yorkshire, but I thought, I fancy writing, if I'm going to spend time on this, being in the sunshine in my head, sort of what you were just saying. And I thought, where can I go? And I knew Gibraltar very well. I've been going by that time to Gibraltar at least once a year for at least 2 decades. So I knew it, and I knew the policing system was identical, exactly the same policing system as in the UK. So I didn't have to study any foreign police procedures and ways of approaching things. I could just take the plot and put it in a different setting, a setting that I knew very well, and I think something that added an awful lot to it. So that's why I set it in Gibraltar. I'm very fond of Gibraltar. I'm very fond of the people of Gibraltar, but it's just such a great hub. Life is coming through it. People say, "Well, it's so small." I say, "Yes, but you've got millions of people going through it. You've got Spain to the north. You've got Africa a few kilometres across the straits. You've got all these wonderful locations, and of course you've got the sea. And dare I say, although of course I'm never going to use it, cruise ships."
No, you have to. But mine started because of the cruise ships, really. I had a pretty bad incident. There was an incident. Special effect went wrong, and I got blown up. It was pretty bad.
Oh my God,
so while I was in therapy, and I was, because I had to do some therapy between the incident and the eventual brain surgery. We won't go there, but my guy said to me, "You should write all these stories down."
Yeah.
And I went, "Well, the trouble is, I'm not famous, and we all know that, you know, I'm known in the industry, but I'm not known by the general public. They're going to buy a book by somebody they know." So it was really weird. That went in my head. I'd written screenplays until that part. Loads of screenplays that had been made into films and won awards for it, but I'd never written a novel. So I was sitting there in the ships, and he's saying to me, "You've got to go on the ships and talk about your career, get yourself back into the industry." I'm sitting there thinking, I could write a crime on a ship, and so that's how it started.
So are your books what I would call holiday books? Are they quite easy to follow?
There's definitely page turners. I wouldn't say they're as easy to follow as some easygoing Saturday afternoon, Sunday evening dramas like the Bergeracs that we both worked on, and
yes.
you know, our CVs are quite similar. If you get back, there's loads of stuff we've done, different episodes of, or I've seen some where we might be on the same episode.
Ships that passed in the night.
It's terrible. But the plots are complex. I would say they're written as movies, so they're big pictures. And I started when I started writing, I had Tom Hanks in my head for the main character, but that was only when I started.
Aim big.
Aim big. Always.
Yes.
But that's what they tell you as a film director.
Yeah.
If you don't aim big and forget everybody else and don't worry about the budget, don't worry about the place, make it happen. And that's the film writer.
And what about you, Robert? Are your books quite easy to read, or are they...
I hope so. I mean, as Stuart just said, I think that because we've both had so much experience of scripts and screenplays, it's often been said, people who've read the book say, "Oh, it's got a pace to it," and I think that is a pace that comes from understanding working in films and television, and so you won't get long chapters. I try to keep my foot on the gas for as much as I possibly can. So I think they're a fairly easy read. You know, and they're based on the classic whodunit style. You know, pretty much you have to sort of.
And do you know when you start your book who done it?
Yes.
So your characters don't lead the way. You have the plot in your head.
I have the basic plot. Doesn't mean it doesn't change. I don't know about you, Stuart, but what I do is I write down the basic plot. So I've got an idea. I've got my main characters, and I know sort of where I'm going, and I know who's done it. But that's always open to change, and very often along the way, not majorly, but you may go off at a slight tangent, and you may go, "Oh, this is a bit better," or you may get there and go, "This is terrible. This has got to be cut immediately, and let's get back to the basic template." But I sort of know where I'm going, but the rest is improvisation, and I'm open to ideas as and when they arrive. And you have to be really, not only when you're working on your own, but by the time you get to working with an editor, you know, an editor will go through it and point out some things where you go, "Oh, why didn't I see that?" And other things, they may come up with other suggestions, and you may go, "Well, maybe I could work with that." And then, just as likely, they'll come up with suggestions, and you go, "No, that's not going to work."
Yes, I mean, is that quite hard because it's your baby and you're giving it to somebody else?
Yeah. I look forward to that moment actually, because it's like a first night, you know, going on stage, or a premiere when the audience is seeing it for the first time. Previews, you know, you need to get there because the learning continues from that moment. You know, you'll take one of your films and you'll go out there and you'll get some responses, and from people you trust, and you'll go, "Okay, yeah, that's a good idea." Others, not so much. But it will evolve, and you'll change things. You'll go back into the editing room and do things.
I find those notes that you get, even if you don't agree with them, I keep them. I don't know about you, but because the person has said it for a reason.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that they're applying it to where this piece in the book or your story, where they've gone, "You know what? This doesn't work for me. I'm not going to change that because it does work." But the reason you're asking that question is actually 40 pages earlier. There isn't the right tools to make it happen. So I love notes, although I often
kick against them.
Kick against them.
Yes.
Absolutely, because you have to. That's why you're there. You're there to run the ship. So you have to keep straight on the point. But I always keep them because someone has said them for a reason. And I can often get to the end of a book and someone's given me a note that I've ignored all the way through. And then at the end I'll go, you know what, there is a little hole here.
Yes. In the setting up, I mean that's that's a really good point. I think, you know, your final delivery of a denouement or something like that, it may be terrific in your mind, but if you haven't, as you say, if you've not allowed the reader the opportunity to actually understand what might be happening or to get involved in the story process and have their thoughts, because people love to read books and they like to guess what's going to happen, or are they going to save the day, who actually did it, who's your serial killer on the ship, and all the rest of it, and they like to think that they've done it, and very often they do, and very often they don't. But it's a job of the writer to absolutely make sure that they've given that opportunity, but it's disguised well.
Exactly.
And those are the moments, I think that's a really good point, those are the moments that you actually have to get right for the book to be successful in the end.
To keep guessing.
I don't attack the book in the same way as you do, because sometimes I don't actually know who did it.
I was going to ask you that. Do you have a plot in your head?
I often don't know where it's going, but often it's a situation. I will often develop a situation that requires to be solved. So therefore I try and take the audience or the reader in as the detective with my two guys, or actually it is now two guys and three girls, and it changes, for them to solve it. And even in Serial Killer, I threw a wild plot in by having a quote poked in the dead woman's mouth. And it's a quote from a poem at the front of T.S. Lawrence's Lawrence of Arabia. And it's just this weird quote. Now, I picked up the quote from a vision I had when I was in Cadiz by going to the puppet theatre there. And there's a quote in there saying, "Scatter, you faceless puppets, scatter." And I put that in the mouth and I went, right, where's that going?
That's
and
a
then
very vivid
I had people
quote.
in the book going, well, this happened in Lawrence of Arabia and that happened. And actually, you know what? We don't think he actually wrote the book himself. And all kinds of things come up. So I love to see mine evolve and then guide it.
That's really interesting, actually, because Mike Leigh, the great film maker, a lot of his certainly earlier work was done completely from improvisation, and he said that he didn't know where it was going to go. He'd set back and he'd talk to actors, develop characters or whatever, and he'd just stop and listen and view and then see what interested him the most, and take that. Very tough for some actors who've probably given their all, and all of a sudden he goes, no, not interested in that. Home you go. But a fascinating way of working, and not dissimilar in a way to what you just said.
My first audition as an actor was for Mike Leigh.
Was it really? Good grief.
Do you both write on the cruise ships? I mean, or do you?
I don't.
Just enjoy the cruise.
I find it very hard to write. Not impossible. To write on the cruise ship, because I'm having such a nice time, and we're very busy. Let's face it. I mean, it's very much a busman's holiday, and I'm not saying it in a negative way, because the work is lovely, meeting people and talking to people and all the rest of it. You, I know, have a really strong work ethic on board ships.
This is my research. Every port we get off, we film it, we learn everything about the film, the port, and you know, as an actor and a writer, you're walking around and you see the streets differently to the public, the tourists.
You're looking for all sorts of things.
There's an alcove there.
Yeah.
Did you see that size of that manhole?
Yeah.
Somebody could, whatever it is, but you see the wonderful things in these locations. But it's like going below decks. You know, you can take the cruiser, or I can, to places they think are familiar and go, you didn't see this, and you didn't know that happened.
Yeah.
So Stuart, your ships are cruise ship crime investigators.
Yeah.
Series. Do you have to read your books in order, or can you read them?
No, you can dip in. They're all independent stories. I think that's the old scenario of what we used to call series television in the old days.
Yes, it is.
Or, as opposed to serial. I can always never work the difference out. But one was in order, you had to watch every episode.
Yeah.
And the other one, you don't need to. So you don't need to read every book. But
difference between Coronation Street and Casualty, although there are underlying similarities.
So the characters
but
continue. Yeah. But the one thing I do, which you wouldn't do if you were in TV because you'd want to keep onto your money, your main character, is I don't mind killing mine off.
Ruthless.
I think that comes from all my years on Emmerdale, when we just, if as soon as a character gets popular, gone.
Ruthless, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely ruthless.
So don't you have any favourite characters that you...
Oh, I do, but then of course they're in danger.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, keep the fear going. Yeah.
You, Robert, do you have favourite characters that you have a particular...
I guess one's main protagonists are always your favourite. Although there are a couple of returning characters which I very much enjoy and are good fun writing. But you do get very close to them, really, and you never stop learning about them, and you never stop researching. I mean, I identify with what you've just said about visiting different places. I mean, we were in Gibraltar yesterday, and that's a place I know very well. So yesterday I set off to find things that I didn't. I find new things.
Yeah. I came back yesterday with 38 minutes worth of tight film rushes, and I don't film rubbish.
Wow.
And we cut it. Well, I cut it last night. I finished at 1:30 this morning into a 14.5-minute film, which is already up on Facebook. Already up there.
Oh, right.
People have all been watching it for the last 2 hours. I only filmed it yesterday.
Oh my God. So
but that's my research. You see, that for me, if I decide to put Gibraltar in a story, and that's your ground, so I probably will not go down there.
You're very welcome.
No, it's yours.
No.
But that's there for me to go, okay, what were the tunnels like? What's this like?
Absolutely.
How would I get past security there?
Yeah. We have to share these things, don't
maybe
we?
my detectives can come and see your police force.
What a very good idea.
Crossover.
Yes, Gus Broderick's old mucker comes into town on the spirit of whatever. Can you use the actual names of the ships that you have to make?
No, all my ships are fictitious, but I would use a class of ship.
Yes.
So definitely people who've been on a Grand Class ship, whether it be the Azora or one of the Princess versions, would recognise the layout of the ship.
Yes. Yeah.
Those people who've been on a smaller ship would recognise that it may have been the Black Watch or a similar ship, or could have been the Adonia that was going across with serial killer. So they'll get excited and they'll know that all the little things they do. But I can go down blind alleys, and I did on my third book actually, which was it's called Cruise Ship Laundry Wars. And it's because I was fascinated. It does, but I was fascinated by the fact that people have rows in the laundry, and if they get nasty, they get a chocolate bar and throw it in the tumble dryer. Now, when I heard this, I was like, that is just disgusting. But then I was told it happens more often than they would like. So I've gone, okay, this is it. Cruise Ship Laundry Wars, there's got to be a book. Of course, you start the book and you're going, it's not going to go anywhere. There's nothing there. But then I discover I've got lady crew members being picked up on this side, on the Albanian side of the Med, kept as new staff, and then all of a sudden leave the ship when they get to Barcelona. So it's a sex trafficking cruise. So I think I might actually eventually retitle that book, because it took me down a whole different route.
Good. Well, the title would suggest something other than sex trafficking.
Sounds like crime rates fast, doesn't it?
Yes, chocolate in the spin dryer. God, I must read that one. That sounds fantastic.
We are getting pinged. We're due on stage in a minute to talk about.
You see, anyone watching this, it never stops. These guys, I tell you what, they're so impressive, and it's been a joy meeting them, I have to say.
Well, I'm going to be talking about this next.
What's that? Is that your?
It's my Thomas Hardy.
Oh, it's your Thomas Hardy.
Romantic period drama. Hey, who'd have thought that?
Oh, it's got my dear.
I've just noticed the book up there on the shelf, Anna Karenina, which we were up against. After I did The Scarlet Tunic, it got picked out at the Cannes Film Festival, and it was invited to Carbourg, the Romantic Film Festival, and was up against that, which was starring Sean Bean, and up against The English Patient, which starred, escapes me now, but it was
Ralph
big
Fiennes.
pictures. Ralph Fiennes, yeah.
Emma Fielding, Jean Marsh, Simon Callow, who's wonderful, and the lovely John Sessions.
I know,
Yeah.
he left.
Who just left us. I was at drama school
Funny
with John.
story. John Sessions, I did a commercial with him when I was pregnant with Luke. So
Our son, who
38
plays
years
the young
ago.
Colin Firth
Yeah.
in Fever Pitch.
Yes, and,
Good grief,
yeah.
does he?
Yeah.
The Hofmeister commercial.
God, so that the whole family is
We got to go. There's people
writing.
calling us.
Yes,
But
they've got to go. This is your half hour.
This is wonderful talking to you.
It's
and I'm
lovely
sure
talking to
I
you
will
too.
see you somewhere. Probably not the Chichester Book Festival, but
Oh, well, you'll see me on the ships, I dare say,
Yeah,
at some
yeah.
point or other.
Well, now,
I'll see you,
once
but
you meet somebody, you keep bumping into them.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been a pleasure talking to you both.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much indeed.
Well, that's been fascinating. Thank you, Robert Daws and Stuart St Paul, and I hope you cruisers are lucky enough to see them on a ship.
Starts filming in September,
Lovely.
and then I'm doing PG Woodhouse on stage. So we're taking that
Brilliant.
around the country in February and March, and then over to New York.
Fantastic. Are you coming to Watford?
I will make a point of coming to Watford.